All right, so let's get into it. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the importance of SOPs, otherwise known as standard operating procedures. If you do not know what they are basically the various documents within your business that outlines what you do, why you do it, how you do it, who you do it with. It provides all the information necessary and it is documented so other people are able to look at it and know exactly what to do. And when you are looking to build a business, right, and you're looking to build a business that aligns with the aspects of your brand, right, it's all well and good that you have built a great brand that allows you to bring in clients into your ecosystem. And now you are actually being able to deliver work. But then you also need to consider the business brand aspect. And with a business brand, you want to be deemed as someone that has everything documented, everything aligned exactly how it's meant to be, and you provide a smooth experience in order to deliver the dream outcome for your client. So in this video, I'm going to go through my process of the particular elements of the client journey that I have documented and I've built various different SOPs for, right? In this video, I'm not going to go through all the SOPs, but I'm going to do a breakdown of exactly what areas I believe are incredibly important to systemize and to document in future for when you're working with numerous different clients and you're just following the process of being able to deliver your work effectively. So let's just get straight into it, and please like, comment, and subscribe. So, why SOPs are the hidden infrastructure of a high trust business? Most experts focus on getting clients, very few build the systems that make the client experience worth talking about. The gap between getting the client and delivering consistently is where reputation leaks. And that part is incredibly important because more often than not, as I mentioned, a lot of people are able to speak a good game with their personal brand. They invite people in and everything looks particularly clean and it looks great. But when you actually get the opportunity working with a client and then your personal brand doesn't necessarily correlate with the way that you do business, that is where it can get a bit confusing for your ICP or your client. So you need to ensure that you find a way that aligns it and keeps your brand cohesive throughout the whole process. And that's why I say being able to document and systemize your business where you have various different SOPs that cover various different topics within your business is incredibly crucial to ensure that you are able to provide a level of service and a level of delivery that reinforces why you are the key person of influence and the obvious choice. So credible experts with real results let the entire process live inside their head. And then what that creates is every new client becomes an experiment, right? Dropped follow ups, late proposals, inconsistent onboarding, all those things that you wouldn't like when it comes down to running a business. You're doing the same thing. And that's not ideal when it comes down to the aspects of being able to provide excellent client delivery. And also retainer conversations that never happened because timing was never right. And depending on your actual business, retainers are really useful at the stage of when you have shown that you are able to deliver a great service and a level of great work. How are we able to work together to continue? It may not be relevant for every single client that you work with or for every particular business or service-based business, but I do feel that it is ideal in terms of increasing the lifetime value that you have with each of your clients, right? So that part is also important, but then you also have to weave in the aspect of even having a process of how you go about doing that as well. So being good at your craft is not enough if the experience of working with you does not match the quality of your thinking. Your process is part of your product. And SOPs are not admin, they are trust infrastructure, as I call it. Every stage of the client journey is an opportunity to either build confidence or erode it. When you operate with consistency, something powerful happens. So you start reacting and start leading. The client feels the difference, even if they cannot name it, and you build a business that can scale beyond your memory. And that is the most impactful thing, because when you are building a business and you scale and you get more people working with you, to have all the various documentation that anyone can pick up and read, and they understand the exact process from start to finish, will only lead to better opportunity down the line. So authority is not just what you know, it is how you operate. And that is why I specifically break down the brand authority in that way, where it covers your personal brand, your business brand, and your campaign brand, because all brands are incredibly important, but then you have to treat them in different ways, in a way that will then make it cohesive with each other. So with that, I'm going to break down the sort of list that I work through for the whole buyer journey, right? From when I identify a lead for the first time to the aspect of having them on long term as a retainer client, right? So first and foremost, what I believe is important from the SOP standpoint is your lead identified. How do you log, qualify, and define the next action for your prospect, right? For your new lead. If you have no next step, then you have leads that will be lost slowly in the process, right? Because what I've learned over the number of years, right, is that the numbers and the data aspect of what you are doing when building a business and establishing your business brand is so important, because you are then able to track and identify and know exactly what the numbers mean, and how you are able to then convert that into predictable inbound opportunity or predictable inbound pipeline. And when you have an understanding of the amount of leads that are brought into your business within a matter of weeks or months, then you are able to then break down and use the maths to then establish how many of them actually convert throughout the actual process that I'm going to show you. Then next, the sales outreach. First message structure, follow-up cadence, tone at each touch point. Outreach should feel like a continuation of your content and not a cold sell. And that is the reason why I talk about the importance of producing content that reinforces what you do and it aligns up with the aspects of your target audience and what they would be interested in as well. And also the aspect of being able to use PR, third party credibility in your process in order to reinforce your level of credibility to more people is a way that will then align, and you are able to then produce the content that then makes it a much more easier process of having that sales conversation. And then following that, you need to think about the process of the clarity call booked. So with my process, for example, so I have a clarity call, the Phases Brand Authority Clarity Call. It's a 20-minute call where I sit down with a prospect. And for that first call, I'm not pitching my actual offer at all. I'm just having a conversation, learning more about them, learning more about their needs, and learning more about if I'm a potential good fit for them. And if that's the case, then we can move on to the second call. But then if it's not something that seems right for the both of us, then we won't move further. But then either way, I always express the importance of that call, because even if it's not an actual fit, in that call, I will be able to provide you additional clarity in your aspects of things that you didn't necessarily know previously. So with that in the process, you don't lose anything, right? And you just get in the aspects of just having the opportunity to connect with me and see if you actually want to work with me as well. So I think in that sense, it's incredibly important. But then for that, you want to prep before you go in the call, and you got to think, how do you prep for that call? What questions do you always ask? Do you have a set list of questions that you always have through your delivery of going through the calls? And with that, I'm not saying that you need to be on a call and then going by the whole sort of manual or the script, right? Because we all know that when it comes down to a sales call, that is really for you to have a genuine conversation. You then have an idea of how you are able to weave in the questions based on how the conversation is flowing and how it's going. But ultimately, do you have your set questions that you are able to ask based on whatever the conversation goes, right? And then once the clarity call is completed, then you also have to think to yourself, now, what does that follow up look like? Have I been able to establish a second call on that actual call? Because as mentioned, I have the clarity call, and then if it's a fit, then we move on to an actual second call where we dive deeper into your problems and if I can actually help you. And then I present my actual offer to you to see if that would be something that you would be interested in. But then from that point, you then want to understand what that conversation looks like and then what actually led to a qualified opportunity. And then following that is the strategy call booked. So what happens in the gap between the lead booking the call? Like how long is the actual gap between the day that they booked it and the actual time? And then in that time between, there's many things that you could do, right? You could share a resource to them. You could share testimonials. You can send any additional bit of materials that could be useful for them to allow them to understand what they can do to prepare for that second call. So with that, you want to define the bridge between the interest and the commitment. And then when you are actually on that call, you then pitch your services. And if you close that call, then that's great. You've closed an opportunity. And then that comes under closed one, right? So what happens in the first 60 minutes after that? Yes. Who gets notified in the process? What does the client receive to reinforce that their decision was the right one? Because the one thing you don't want to do is be getting excited without actually showcasing to your new client that they've made the right decision, right? They've made the right decision and you are more than happy to start the onboarding process as soon as possible and then being able to provide them the necessary wins as soon as possible so they know that they made the right choice in working with you. And then in the aspect that the actual opportunity was lost, you still need to record it. You still need to record it so you are able to understand the why. What were the objections that were presented in the call that you now understand that you can redevelop as content, right? Then you also need to think about what does the follow-up look like 3 months later down the line. A no right now is not always a no forever, right? There will be opportunities where they may come back requiring your services. So in that sense, you always need to keep the door open and always keep that prospect relatively warm for when the opportunity arises. But then you always need to have the idea of how are you developing the process of that particular thing. And that is when you build out your SOPs and you have them for all of these different criterias, that makes it most important that you are able to then be accountable for yourself, but then you're able to then share this with team members and anyone else who's working with you so they know the process of how you are building your business and how you are able to scale. So number 8 is decision pending. So with that, you didn't necessarily get a no on the call and you didn't get a yes. So then more so, it's just something that they're willing to think about. Despite these sort of objection handling, they still felt that it wasn't the right time. So then with that, you have to define the follow-up timing and the messaging, right? Remove the friction without applying that pressure. And your SOP should remove the guesswork entirely. So then you know exactly what the process is in terms of being able to reintegrate them into the sales process where they will ultimately want to finish the process and start to work with you on that particular program or that particular service that you are offering. And then through that, the contract sent. So with that, when do you follow up? What do you say? When do you move on? The proposal stage kills more deals than any other because experts, they default to silence, right? They don't do it as fast enough in terms of the process. And that's why I say the SOP is important because you have an idea of exactly what the process is from the aspect of the client saying, yes, they want to work with you, to the point of sending over the contract alongside the onboarding process, all within the time frame that keeps them active and interested in what the decision that they made with wanting to work with you. So you can't lack on the idea that you're taking your time with that, because in that aspect of things, those couple hours, I would say, in the process of getting a yes from a client is so crucial and so important for you to get right to ensure that the relationship remains as strong as when you started it. So in that, you then have to consider the contract's now been sent. So now with the invoice and the deposit paid, is it an immediate confirmation? Have you got your receipt? What's the next steps following that? What is the message that you are now sharing with them following that the invoice has now been sent and it's been approved? And do not let the payment stage feel transactional, right? Make it feel like the beginning of something that is going to really shape everything for them when it comes down to their business, when it comes down to their service, when it comes down to their brand, whatever it is that you are offering. let them know that they made the right choice, and don't make it seem like it was a transactional aspect, because as soon as your client believes that that process was deemed as transactional, then it makes them worried in the process. It makes them feel that was it worth making that decision, right? And if you do not follow the process of developing real SOPs that help you in the process of establishing how you are able to go through the process to encourage and to make your client feel like they made the right choice, it's going to be extremely difficult long term. That's what I'm saying. It's super important. And then following the onboarding, the kickoff call, right? What's your structure looking like? Have you agreed on the next steps? What gets documented from that side? Do you have a timeline documenting exactly what your clients should expect throughout the actual process of working with you? Those are the things that are also very, very important. And you need to really consider that, because no one likes the idea of putting their money towards something or investing in something and they have no breakdown of how these things are going to happen or what to expect in certain times. You want to provide as much clarity and detail of the actual time frame of working with you, to the point where it just makes them feel at ease, because they know what the steps are. They know when things are required to be at this certain time or this certain stage of the actual process. So that part is important, and you need to establish that within the kickoff call, to then know exactly how you are able to start a great position that will lead to results. And then you have to then think about the client delivery. So what gets communicated, right, between you and the client? How often, in what format, and through which channel? Are you using Google Chat? Are you using Slack? What channel are you using in order to provide updates to your client on a regular basis? You need to understand that the delivery needs a rhythm, and they do not rely on memory to maintain it. Because if you rely on memory, then it's not going to go to plan, because you want to establish everything in a way that makes it a lot more easy for your client to work with you, right? And you are able to provide the various updates, and you're able to provide the relevant resources and materials as and when, in the most seamless way. And then one thing that I feel that many people don't necessarily consider is the halfway check-in. So I feel like with any service that you are running, you need to have a halfway check-in with your client, right? And you would have already established a sort of regular frequency with check-in meetings or whatever the case, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever the case. However, throughout the engagement, I do feel that within the halfway line, there should be a halfway review covering all the aspects, just to make sure that your client is happy with everything in the process, right? And you also need to be in the aspects of including the actual date of the halfway check-in during the onboarding. If you do that, then it really adds something great, because it then highlights and showcases that you are very much forthcoming with wanting to see the success, and you are including all the relevant dates that align with your client as well. So the halfway check-in is one, and then the final review. So the final review is more so at the end of the engagement as well. So you present the results clearly, you summarize what was achieved, you frame the conversation about what comes next, right? And how you end is how you are remembered in that aspect. You've gone through the whole process with them, you got them the results, you got them the things that they required throughout the whole time, and you helped them to achieve their dream outcome. What is next? So in the offboarding process, offboarding is not the end of the relationship, right? It is either the beginning of the next conversation or the beginning of a referral. So the way you close determines which one. So with that, alongside that, you then need to think about the testimonial aspect as well. When you ask, how you ask and what format you request is very important for what you are looking to do. Are you looking to have a testimonial that's written? Are you looking for a video testimonial? Are you looking to take it one step further and actually record a content with your client talking about the outcomes that you were able to achieve? The testimonial is a proof asset that continues doing commercial work long after the relationship ends. So, as long as you've done the work and you've done great work at that, then the testimonial that you will receive will reinforce why you are the key person of influence and the obvious choice within your industry and niche, and how you were able to help, right? And then you need to think about now the retainer offered, right? So now you've done that. The retainer conversation should not be a surprise. It should be something that the client was always going to be in the know regarding that particular upsell, right? Then you have to think to yourself, when, at what point do you raise it, how to frame it, what keeps it alive? And you raise it way before the work ends, right? Not after. So when it comes down to that, you need to think about the best time. So ideally, you could reference it in the halfway point from when you have delivered the results and they are actually happy at that moment in time. Refer it at that point in time and then see what they say, and then continue to build towards that retainer aspect of things. And then that's it in regards of my process and my whole client buyer journey, right? But it's so detailed in that way. And with that, there's so many different SOPs I've built for each section. And it may seem like it's a bit too much, but when you get to the process of wanting to systemize everything, so it just makes a lot of sense of how you deal with everything on a day to day, especially when you're working with multiple people, it makes the most sense, and it really helps you to just continue to grow and develop and refine your skills over time. And because you have the list of SOPs documented, anything new throughout your journey, you just add to it and you just refine it and you just make it something that continues to grow and evolve as you continue to grow and evolve with your business. So the process is a signal, right? And when you operate with consistency, clients notice, not always consciously, but they notice, right? So when things happen, when they're supposed to happen, they notice, right? When questions get answered before they have to be asked, they notice. And when the experience feels considered rather than improvised, they notice. And that's what you really want to be able to do when it comes down to working with clients. And that noticing becomes confidence, confidence becomes testimony, and testimony becomes authority, right? And the experts with the most powerful authority are often not the most technically brilliant. They are the ones who made the expertise easy to experience, trust, and refer. So, authority is organized credibility. Remember that. An organized client process is one of the clearest expressions of that. So that's it for this video. I hope that this video was incredibly useful for you, because the process of being able to develop the system for myself has been incredible and it works great. And of course, you're always going to refine and develop it over time. But when I sat down and really thought to myself, it's in my best interest to spend the time to systemize the process at an early stage, then it just helped me in the long term of being able to work towards a systemized business as I continue to grow and develop and continue the journey to build seven-figure brand within 1,000 days. But on that note, please do like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you tomorrow. Peace out. Look after yourself.